Hi everyone, this is Rosie. Today I'm going to be sewing the Swoon Denver Backpack. If you'd like to sew along with me, you can purchase the pattern through the link in the video description below. I do earn a small commission from that, but it's at no extra cost to you. We'll begin with step one, which is prepping. Now, the first thing that I like to do is read through all of the instructions. This gives me the opportunity to see what's involved with creating the bag, and it also gives me the opportunity to plan any changes that I might want to make to the bag. You especially want to read the directions for printing out the pattern. The pattern needs to be printed out at 100% on your printer. So you'll go ahead and print out your pattern pieces, and then there are additional pieces that you need to cut out, and you'll find those pieces in the prepping section. Also keep in mind that this pattern has two different sizes, a large and a mini backpack. So follow the directions for which pieces you need to cut out for the bag that you're making. Now, I had cut out all of my pieces and I prepared them with some contact paper. I will link to a video that I have showing how I turn my pattern pieces into templates with contact paper. But one thing that I want to point out is that with some of the pieces in this particular pattern, when you cut them out, this is the side pocket, you would cut the side pocket out with the print face up, and then the second one you would be cutting out with the printed side face down. So in other words, the two pieces should be mirror images of each other. You don't want to cut out two pockets with the print side up or the print side down. Now, for my fabrics, this will be my exterior, and these pieces here will be my lining. They're 100% cotton quilting fabrics. They're Tula Pink fabrics. And then for my contrasting pieces, I've chosen some cork. And then for interfacing, I have interfaced all of my pieces with woven fuse instead of the SF101. I like the woven fuse because it gives a little bit more body. And also the pattern doesn't call for it, but on the exterior pieces, I've put some thermolam on there because I just wanted it to have a little bit more structure than what just the woven fuse would give. For my thread, I'm using the Gutermann Mara 70. It's a heavier thread than normal domestic sewing machine thread. So I will be sewing on my Juki TL2010 Q. It does accommodate this thread. You will have to check with your sewing machine and the manufacturer to see what kind of thread is suitable for your sewing machine. And then for the zipper, I'm using a YKK zipper. This is a very long one. I'll be cutting it to size. And this one, the zipper tape on it is 1 1/4 inches wide. Now, as part of the prepping, you do need to put some foam on your lining pieces. So I'm going to take my bottom lining and the back lining right here. And I have my foam. On the cork pieces, I did not put any interfacing on those pieces at all. So what the pattern calls for is for you to take a piece of foam that you're going to cut out that's 1/2 inches shorter all around than the lining piece. So this is the bottom lining. You'll cut out your foam 1/2 inch shorter all around, and you'll zigzag around the foam, okay? And then you'll cut out another piece of woven fuse or SF101, whatever you're using, and you'll cut that out the actual size of the piece, and you're going to sandwich the foam in between the woven interfacing and the lining, the bottom lining fabric, and you'll press that all down well. Now, I did not prepare this one yet so that you can see what it looks like. Here is the back. This is my foam piece. Okay, I've already cut it to size and I've zigzagged around the edges, and then I will take the woven fuse and I will sandwich that foam in between the woven fuse and the lining. And I'll press it all really well. Make sure that you press down these edges very well. Once you've finished all that prepping, we can begin sewing the bag. Now we're going to work on step number 2, which is assemble the side pockets. So since I'm working with a very long zipper here, I need to cut my zipper to size. If you're using a 12-inch zipper like the pattern calls for, then you'll follow the directions in the pattern for that. So the first thing I want to do is take my zipper and I'm going to cut off the end of it. Right there. So that little piece at the end that stops the zipper, we're cutting that off. And then I'm going to mark it to be 12.5 inches. And that should be right about here. Okay? Now I'm going to cut right where that mark is, but before I do, and if you're doing your zipper the way I'm doing mine, you want to make sure that you pull the zipper past that mark there. Okay, that's really important. If you don't, you're going to have a big problem. So now I'm going to cut right at that mark. Okay, so there's my zipper cut to the 12.5 inch length. And the next thing I'm going to do is prepare the tabs. Now in the pattern, she wants you to fold in each half of the zipper tab 1/2 inch in from each edge, and then fold it in half again. And then you would place it on the end of the zipper, okay, like that. But I'm doing mine a little bit differently. What I like to do is take the zipper tab and I cut it completely in half. Okay? And then I'm going to take one end of the tab and I'm going to secure it on this side of the zipper, and then the other half of the tab will get secured on the other half of the zipper. Okay? And I will just hold that in place with a wonder clip, and then I'll go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch across the tab. I'm at the machine and I'm ready to sew the zipper tabs to the zipper, so I'm just going to sew across the width with a 1/4 inch seam. And on my machine, the zipper foot is approximately, it's actually a little bit less, but approximately 1/4 inch. So I will follow the edge of the zipper foot along the edge of the fabric. And I'm using a stitch length of about 2.5. Okay, and there you have the seam sewn there. And then what you'll do next is you can fold these tabs back like this, nice and tight, and then you can sew across this width right here with a 1/8 inch seam, or 1/8 inch away from the edge. And to do that, I just line my presser foot up with the fabric, and what I'm actually lining up is this toe right here. I'm looking at the center of the toe and I'm just going to sew across. So I'm going to start sewing, and then I do give a little bit of a back stitch. And then you want to do the same exact thing to the other side of the zipper right here. But before I pin those zipper tabs on, what I'll do is I'll just put this underneath the presser foot. And I'm just going to sew these two ends together. And that will just make it a little bit easier to hold everything in place when I sew on the zipper tabs. So here are my zipper tabs, and I do the same exact thing. I cut the entire zipper tab in half, and I'm going to pin 1/2 to each side of the zipper. So just line everything up and clip it all together, and then you'll sew this exactly the same way that we sewed the other end. Okay, so I have sewed the zipper tabs onto both ends of the zipper. Okay, and I did the top stitching right along here. Okay, so now we're ready to attach it to the pocket. So, a couple of things. You're going to be pinning or clipping the zipper to the exterior pocket, right sides together. And right sides is going to mean the zipper pull is facing the exterior of the pocket, the right side of the exterior of the pocket. You want to make sure that your zipper pull is going to be at the top of the pocket right here. Okay, so when you pin, this zipper pull right here needs to be on this end. Now, since I've done mine a little bit differently than what the pattern calls for, what I did was I took my zipper and I folded it in half. I matched up the edges of the zipper tabs, okay, and I folded it in half and I marked the center of the zipper with 2 marks right here. Then I took the pocket and I put the 2 ends together like this, and I kind of followed along the curve just like this, and then I snipped a very tiny V in that pocket, and you could see it's right here. So now what I want to do is I want to take my zipper and I want to match the center marking on the zipper with the little V that I cut out, and I'm going to put my first clip in there. And this will ease in very nicely. And you want to make sure that as you're clipping or pinning, whatever you're doing, that the edge of the zipper tape matches up with the edge of the pocket. Okay, so put in as many pins or clips as you're comfortable with. If you're doing this, the zipper the same way I did, where you cut it to size, the zipper tab will hang over a little bit at the end. That's fine, don't worry about that, because we'll trim that off later on. Okay, and again, make sure that your zipper pull is at the top of the pocket. Now, you'll go over to the sewing machine and you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper. And I've actually already done one here. So here's the one that I just sewed on. Okay, and then after you sew the zipper on, you will take one of the pocket lining pieces and you're going to pin it to the other side of the zipper, so this side right here, and what you're going to have is the zipper sandwiched in between the exterior and your lining piece. And you want to make sure that all of the edges are even. That includes these edges right here, the bottom edge of the pocket and the side edge of the pocket. Everything needs to be nice and even. So you'll go ahead and clip this on. And then when you're done clipping, you're going to turn the piece over and go to your sewing machine, and you're going to follow the previous line of stitching that you created when you sewed on the first side of the zipper. Okay, I'm ready to start sewing the zipper in to the exterior of the pocket. And my zipper pull right now is at the other end of the pocket, so I don't need to worry about this right now. But when I get close to this, I'm probably going to have to open up my zipper a little bit. And with my sewing machine, because I'm using a wide zipper, the actual foot, the regular sewing foot on this machine, will sew along the length of this without any trouble. If I was using a more narrow zipper, if I was using like a 1-inch zipper, then I would have to change to a zipper foot. I'm using a stitch length of about 2.5. You do not really need to backstitch, because when we sew on the lining side of the pocket, we're going to sew over the existing line of stitching that we're going to create right now. So as you're sewing, just make sure that the edge of the zipper tape is lined up with the edge of the pocket. Make sure that nothing is slipped out of place. It should go in very easily for you. So now I'm coming to where my zipper is. You always stop with the needle down, pick up your presser foot, and then you can reach under and slide that open, then lower your presser foot and continue sewing. Okay, now that we have this zipper sewn in, we're going to sew the lining to the other side. I already have one ready here. So here is the other pocket, and we have the exterior here. We have the zipper sandwiched in between, and then the lining. And we are going to sew right over this line of stitching that we created when we sewed in the zipper on this side. So again, you're just going to line up your stitching with your needle there, and you're going to sew exactly the way you sewed on the other side. Just follow around the curve. And continue to make sure that your edges are even. You want to be even with that lining. Now I'm getting close to where that zipper hole is, so again I'm going to stop with the needle down, lift my presser foot. I can reach underneath here, and I have the zipper hole right there. Just going to pull it open, and then I'll lower down my presser foot again, but before I do I just want to make sure that those edges are nice and even there. Okay, and now that you've finished sewing everything together, you'll take this and you're going to turn it right side out. You're going to press everything really well. If you're using a cork or a vinyl or anything like that, you don't want to iron on your cork, okay? But you can press it lightly from this side if you want. If you're using like a cotton quilting fabric on this side, you can press that down lightly. And then you'll go back over to the machine and you're going to top stitch right along the edge here. Now I'm ready to do my top stitching. I did give a light press from the lining side, and the other thing I did is I put some clips in to make sure that my lining and my exterior are even with each other. You want to make sure that they're even, okay? And then I'm just going to put it underneath my presser foot. And I'm going to sew approximately 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of that zipper. So what I'm doing again is I'm looking at this toe of the foot and I'm lining the middle of that toe up right along this edge here, and I'm going to sew along that edge. The other thing that helps is that you can pull from this end and you can pull your zipper tape out to make sure that everything is lying flat and right where it should be. I'm going to use a stitch length of about 3, and I am going to back stitch at both ends. You just follow the curve around. And there's the top stitching. Now we're going to sew the lining to the other side of the zipper. So this is what you should have now. You have two pockets that are mirror images of each other. You have the exterior and your lining with the zipper sandwiched in between the two, okay? And as I said, they're mirror images of each other. In the pattern, she refers to them as side A and side B. That is why you had to flip that pattern piece over when you cut out your pockets so that they would be mirrored to each other like this. Now, the next thing is we need to sew the other lining pieces to the opposite side of the zipper. And you want to take the correct piece, so either the A piece or the B piece, and you're going to actually pin the right side of the pocket to the wrong side of the zipper. And what's the wrong side of the zipper? The wrong side of the zipper is the opposite side that does not have the zipper pull. So this is the wrong side of the zipper. Now, what I'm going to do is the same thing I did when I pinned my zipper to the exterior pocket. I'm just going to fold this in half, and right at the center I'm going to make a little clip. Now, if you're not comfortable making a clip either into your lining or to your exterior, just use a marking pen, okay? If you do clip, you just don't want that clip to be deeper than 1/4 of an inch. Now, what I can do is I can take my zipper, which still has that center mark there, and match it up with the V that I just cut into the lining piece. And I'm going to clip this all along the length, and then what I'll do is I'll go over to the sewing machine and I'll do the same thing I did before. I will sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper. Okay, so here we are again. I have sewn the lining, the pocket lining, to the other side of the zipper. Okay, so this is what you should have now. You should have a pocket lining, your zipper is in the middle, then you'll have another pocket lining right here, and then you'll have your exterior. So that's where you should be right now. So now we're on step 3, which is to attach the side pockets. Now remember that you're working with A pieces and B pieces. So this is your A pocket and this is your A main panel. And it's obvious because you can see that this would fit into the shape here. Now I'm going to attach mine differently than she does in the pattern, and basically it's what I've been doing all along. I'm going to take this piece here, this side panel, and I'm going to find the center, and I'm going to put a very tiny clip into it, and then this is going to get pinned to the right side of the zipper. Okay, so what I will do is I will take this panel right here, and I'm going to match this V that I cut into the pocket into the V that I just cut into the main panel, and I'm going to put a clip, and then you're going to clip all along the length. It's going to fit right in for you, and we will be sewing along this previous line of stitching right here. Okay, so you just pull the two edges together. You can curve it around your fingers a little bit to help it along, but it really doesn't need much coaxing at all. It really will fit right in. Okay, and then you'll pin the other side. And once you're done pinning in the curves to each other, you'll go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew this. So now I'm going to sew that seam. I'll follow that previous line of stitching. I am actually going to back stitch here just because this is the main body of the bag. I have a little bit more bulk than you might be working with because I do have the Thermolam in there. So you can just reach under and keep adjusting this bottom layer here, that main panel, as you need to. It really does sew in very nicely. I'm at my zipper pull right now, so I'm just going to lift up my zipper. I'm sorry, I'm going to lift up my presser foot and open the zipper, and then I'll continue sewing to the end. Just making sure that my edges are still lined up. And I'll backstitch at the end. So here now you have your pocket sewn into place. So now I have the pocket sewn to the main panel, okay? When you're sewing, make sure that nothing is slipping. If it does, like if this piece were to slip inward, you'd have a very, very narrow seam there. And you're only using a 1/4 of an inch seam as it is, so make sure that your edges are nice and even as you're sewing. Now, after you've got that sewn in, you want to match up all of your edges here. So you're going to match up the edge of the exterior with the inner linings, okay, and just clip them together. I like to start at the bottom and work my way up to the top. Okay, and when you get to where the zipper tab is, you're just going to push it up and it'll sort of fold in half there naturally for you. Okay, so you want to make sure that that zipper tab is folded in half. I'm actually going to put a clip right on top of the zipper tab there. And then you'll do the same thing on this end. Match up all of your edges. Make sure everything's nice and even. And clip all the way up to the zipper tab, and you'll fold this zipper tab in half also. Then when you're done, you're going to go over to the machine and you're just going to baste 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And you'll go all the way through the zipper tab on both sides. And when you're done, this is what you should have. So you can see it better from this side. Here's my 1/4 of an inch basting. This seam right here needs to be pressed down towards the pocket. Okay? And then when you have that all closed up, you'll have a nice big pocket in here. Now I'm ready to baste everything in place. So I'm going to use a stitch length of about, I don't know, 3.5, 4, whatever you want. This is just a basting, and you're only going to sew 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Okay, and then we'll pivot and sew up the other side. We're moving on to step 4, which is to construct the handle, straps, and connectors. So I have one of my straps here, and the first thing that you want to do is take your strap and you want to mark a line right down the center of that strap. Then you'll go over to your iron and you'll press one side in towards the center. Then you'll press the other side in towards the center. And you'll press all along the length. And then, after you've done that, you're going to fold the entire strap in half all along the length. Okay? And then you'll take it to your sewing machine and you're going to sew some top stitching 1/8 of an inch from each edge of the strap. I have one of the straps completely finished here. I've top stitched both sides of the strap. And in addition, I used a new technique that I just learned off of a YouTube video. And the video will teach you how to finish the edge of your strap so that you don't have any raw edges. Now, it's not my technique to share, so I will just link you to the video below. So if you would like to finish your strap the way I did, you can go ahead and look at that video. You only need to do a finished edge on one side. The other side you'll leave as a raw edge because this side will be sewn into the backpack. Next, you'll be working on the handle. So I have mine here. And again, you want to mark a line right down the center of the strap, and then you'll fold both edges in towards the middle. And you'll give it a nice press, and then you'll fold the entire piece in half. And once you've done that, you can go over to the machine and run a top stitch 1/8 of an inch from each edge. And you don't have to do any special treatments to your ends here because both of these raw edges will be sewn into the backpack. And then you're going to work on your strap connectors. So here's one of mine. You're going to mark a line right down the center of that connector. And then you're going to fold both edges in towards the center and press it really well. Then you'll take your hardware and you'll slip it right on the end of that strap connector, and you're going to fold the entire piece in half. Okay? And then you'll go over to the sewing machine and you will top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. You're going to pivot, sew across, and then top stitch 1/8 of an inch from this edge. And when you're sewing, you'll go as close as you can comfortably get to the hardware without causing a problem with your presser foot. Okay, so I have one of my strap connectors finished right here. And you can see that I've top stitched 1/8 of an inch from the edge, pivot, sew across, and then sew down 1/8 of an inch from the other side. Next, you'll want to mark the placement for your straps. So all I did was take the pattern piece, I cut along the dotted lines where the straps go, and I just folded that back, and I lined up my pattern piece on top of the back exterior, and then I just took a chalk wheel and marked both sides of the line. So now we're ready to place our strap connectors to the bottom of the backpack here, and then we'll put the handle at the top. So I'm just going to put the strap connector within those marks that I made just to line it up, and you want to make sure that this edge right here is at least to the edge of the backpack back right here. Okay, so I'm going to just clip it on with a wonder clip, and then I'll put the other one on. Okay, and then the handle will go in between these two inner marks. And when I do that, I like to have the edge, the two folded edges that we brought together, I'd like to have those towards the inside or towards the center of the back. Okay, so just line those up again, and I'm going to put it in with a wonder clip for now. And then the other side of the handle goes this way. Just make sure that you don't twist it. You know, you don't want it to be like that. Okay, it needs to be in a U that's not twisted over itself. Alright, and then we'll go over to the machine and we'll sew this down. So we're over at the machine and I'm going to baste the strap connectors into place. Make sure that you're within those chalk marks that you made. And this is just a basting, so let's see, I'll probably use a stitch length of 3 for it. Now, when I actually sew the back of the pack to the side panels, I will stitch over this area a couple of times. And I'm just doing a basting about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Okay, if you're worried about your piece shifting when you start sewing, you know, if you start sewing out here, sometimes your piece can get shifted in as the presser foot moves over the strap there. So one thing that you can do is you can start with your presser foot down right on top of the strap there, and then just drop down your needle and that will actually hold it for you. But you'll have to back stitch a little bit because you're not starting at the beginning of the strap. I already have one of the adjustable straps sewn to the back of the backpack, and now we're going to put on the other one. So you're going to take your strap connector and you'll take the finished edge, or if you didn't finish your edge the way I did, you'll take one of the raw edges and you'll come up through the connector and then down over that center bar and out the other end. And then what you want to do is go over to your sewing machine and you're going to sew across here. I like to go across maybe 3 or 4 times. Or if you prefer to use rivets, you could just put some rivets in here. And if you're sewing it, you want to leave enough room for your presser foot to get to that line of stitching without interfering with the hardware. So I'm going to go sew that in place right now. So that is now sewn into place. And the next step is I'm just going to put this down over here, and that edge that we just sewed down is up. Okay? So then I'm going to take the other end of the strap and I'm going to put it right through here, right through the hardware at the end of the strap connector. Okay? You want to make sure that nothing gets twisted. And again, this needs to be up. The end of the strap needs to be up. Then you're going to take your raw edge and you're going to thread it through the bottom of the connector, and then you'll thread it back down the other side. Okay, you'll pull it through a little bit, and then this is going to get secured where we made the markings. Okay, now again, I situated mine so that that double folded edge there is pointing towards the center. So you'll just go over to your machine now and base stitch this in place the same way we base stitched the other ones. Now once you have everything basted into place, you just want to make sure that your strap is not twisted at all, and the end of the strap that you sewed down should be sandwiched in between the inner and outer strap. We're beginning step 5, which is the main panels. So you want to start by preparing your zipper by putting the zipper tab at the end. Because I'm using the continuous zipper, I did mine exactly the way we prepared them for the pockets. And I'm going to take my 1-inch ruler and I'm going to trim this zipper tab down to 1 inch. So I'm just going from the fold and I'm trimming that little bit off of the edge. Okay, I haven't cut it to length yet. Next, you'll take one of your main panels and you're going to pin your zipper right side to the right side of the main panel. And again, right side is the side that has your zipper pull. So line up the end of your tab with the edge of the panel and clip it in place. I haven't trimmed my zipper yet, but I will after I'm done clipping it. So just clip all along the length here. And then for me, my zipper will stop right here, right at that little notch. So I'm just going to put a mark there. And then I'm going to clip that end off. But before I do, let's remember to pull one of my zipper pulls past those marks so that I don't have a problem with my zipper pull. Now the ends of these zippers will be covered by that tab that's going to hold your hardware later on. So now you just want to go over to your machine and sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of this zipper. Before you start sewing your zipper in, you need to make a mark 5/8 of an inch in from the edge of the panel. That's where you're going to start sewing. So you'll just take a ruler and make a mark with your chalk marker or whatever other marking tool that you have. And I'm going to start by dropping my needle right on that mark. Okay, and then I'm just going to sew across. So I'll be sewing with a stitch length of 2.5. And I'm going to take a little back stitch here. Make sure that your zipper tape is staying nice and even with the edge of your side panel. And I'm near my zipper pull right now, so I just want to open that up. And then I'll sew to the end and back stitch. Next, you're going to take one of the lining panels and you're going to pin it to the opposite side of the zipper. And make sure that you match up all of your edges. You're going to clip it along the length. And then you'll go over to the sewing machine once you have everything clipped into place, and you're going to sew over this previous line of stitching right here. I'm getting ready to sew the lining to the other side of the zipper. Now, I did not secure the ends of my zipper here, so if you're doing your zipper the way I am, if you're using a continuous zipper that you've cut, you might want to go ahead and stitch these two ends together the way we did previously in the video. That way, when you go to move your zipper pull as you're sewing, you won't accidentally slide the zipper pull off the end of the zipper. But I'm good with it, so I just left mine the way it is. And I'll just put one more clip in the end here. Okay, and we're going to go over the previous line of stitching. So I'm going to start right on the end. Make sure all of your edges are even. Even your side edges here. Okay? Okay, and I'm going to back stitch at both ends. Okay, and I can feel that my zipper pull is right there. So I'm going to reach under, and I'm going to slide it just a little bit past the foot so that I don't risk pulling it all the way off. And then I'm going to stop right where I stopped the last line of stitching and back stitch. Now the next thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to take this whole piece and you'll want to fold it wrong sides together. Okay, you'll give everything a really good press, and then you're going to go and top stitch along this edge right here. I'm ready to top stitch. So what I did is I went over to the iron and I opened up the seam here. I pressed it nice and flat, and then I folded the two sides with the wrong sides together, and I pressed really well on each side of the zipper. Okay, so now I'm ready to run my top stitching, and just like before, you need to start 5/8 of an inch away from the edge. So I have a mark there. I'm not sure that you'll be able to see that on the camera, but I do have a mark there. And I'm going to drop my needle right into that spot where the mark is. And I'm using the center of this toe here, and I'm letting the center of that toe ride right along this edge where the seam is to do my top stitching. And that should give me approximately 1/8 of an inch. And you do want to back stitch at both ends. I'm going to use a stitch length of maybe 3.5 because I do have some thickness in there with the Thermolam. I don't need to worry about that zipper pull right now because I'm far enough away from it. And I'm stitching all the way to the edge and then back stitch. Now you want to go ahead and do the same exact thing to the other side of the bag. I'm now going to sew the other side panel to the opposite side of the zipper, and I just wanted to show you that when I do that, I actually put a few clips in my edges here. These are the two edges of the side panels, just to make sure that everything is lined up correctly. And you can see that my notch here is lined up with the other notch and with the edge of the zipper. So now I will just start sewing this side of the zipper in. So at this point right now, you should have the exterior sewn to both sides of the zipper and also the lining sewn to both sides of the zipper. Okay? So now the next thing that we're going to do is sew the front seam of the backpack together. So you want to put the two exterior sides, right sides together, and you're going to move your lining out of the way. And then you're going to clip the two exteriors together. You're going to be starting with this notch right here. And you'll clip all along the length. Okay, make sure that all your edges are even, including your bottom edge. You want your bottom edge to be nice and even on both sides. Okay. And then when you go over to the sewing machine, you're going to be stitching 1/2 of an inch all the way down this length, okay? So this notch right here is 1/2 inch in, and that's where you'll start sewing. Then when you're done, you're going to go over to your iron, you're going to press this seam that you just sewed open, and you'll top stitch on both sides of the exterior. Now I'm ready to sew that front seam, sewing the two side panels together, and I'm going to let my needle start right at this point right here. And I'm going to sew at a stitch length of 3.0 because with the Thermolam I do have some bulk in here. Just make sure my needle's right at that edge. And you want to back stitch at both ends here. Back stitch. And then back stitch at the end. Now what you'll want to do is go over to your iron. You're going to open the zipper up completely, and then you're going to flatten this out, and you're going to press your seam open. So I went ahead and I pressed my seam open, and now I'm going to sew on each side of this seam line 1/8 of an inch away from the seam with my top stitching. And I'm going to top stitch at about 3.5 because I do have a lot of bulk in here now. Back stitch. And as you're doing your top stitching, just feel along here to make sure that seam is remaining open underneath. You don't have to go all the way up to where the zipper is because that is going to be closed with the tab that we'll put on that's going to hold our swivel clasp later on. So here's what the bag looks like right now with the two side panels sewn down the center. Okay, here's the zipper right there. And now what you want to do is I'm going to open the zipper up all the way, and I'm going to turn everything with the wrong side out and the right sides together. So now it's laying flat like this. The exterior is on this side and the lining is on this side. You're going to pin your lining together, okay? Starting with that notch right there again. Pin or clip, whatever, all the way down the length, and then you'll go and you're going to sew 1/2 inch away from the edge of the center front lining there. Okay, and then you'll go ahead and press that open. I have the center front lining sewn down now with that 1/2 inch seam, and I pressed everything open. Now you can go ahead and trim down your seams to 1/8 of an inch if you want. I usually do not tend to trim down my seams unless I feel there's too much bulk. Okay, now we're up to step 6, which is to attach the back panel. So what you should have right now is your two sides sewn together, okay? So you'll have the exterior with the pocket and then the lining. Then you have the lining on the other side and then the exterior on the opposite side of the bag. Okay? So to sew on the back panel, we need to turn this with the lining side out. So just reverse it there. And your zipper needs to be closed. Okay? Now you want to take your back panel, which I have right here, and you want to mark the center back panel on both the top and the bottom. You can do that just by laying your pattern piece over this piece right here and marking. I just marked mine with a chalk marker. And the other thing I also want to do is I want to trim off this excess strap connector right there. So I'm just going to trim it even with the back. Okay. And then I'll trim it off of this side. And then I'm also going to trim the little bit of excess that's lapping over here. Okay? All right. Now, this is important. When you're sewing the back panel on, you don't want to sew through this zipper tab on the lining side of the zipper, and you don't want to sew through the lining. So you need to pin that out of the way. All right? And then you're going to take your back panel, and starting with the top, this is the top of the back panel, you're going to line this center marking up with the center of your zipper tab, and you'll clip it together. And then you're going to go ahead and clip the back panel, the back exterior panel, to the bottom of the side panel. That's where the pocket is, right there. So clip those bottom edges together. And then you're going to work your way up to the center. Just clip it all in place nicely there. Now we're only clipping through the exterior back and the exterior front. Okay? We are not clipping anything to the lining right now. Okay? And to make this fit in a little bit better, you can curve everything around your fingers here when you get to where the curve is. And I do like to use a lot of clips when I get to this point. And it should fit in very nicely for you. Make sure that your edges are even. When you get to where any of these straps are, I am going to go over those a couple of times just to make sure they're nice and secure. Okay, and now you're just going to go ahead and pin the other side of the back panel to the side. Again, you're not clipping through the lining right now. So go ahead and finish clipping, and then we'll go to the sewing machine and sew this. You'll be sewing with a 1/2 inch seam. I may baste mine in first and then sew over it again with the permanent stitching. We're going to start sewing the back exterior panel to the exterior bag. And remember that you don't want to sew through your lining pieces or the bottom tab, bottom zipper tab, okay? So I just put a little pin to hold that back. And now I'm just going to set this up. I'm going to sew with a basting stitch first and see how that goes, because I am working with some bulk here between the cork and my thermolam. So you want to stitch this at 1/2 of an inch. I think I'm going to start with a stitch length of 3.5. And then once I'm happy with the seam, then I will go over it a second time. Okay? So here we are, and I believe I'm at approximately 1/2 of an inch right there. So I'm going to stitch forward, then back stitch. Now keep in mind, you're sewing through that pocket, and you do have the zipper tabs at the end of the pocket. So again, you're sewing through some bulk. Okay, I'm coming right up to where the zipper is. So I'm just going to go slowly. My zipper should not actually be in that seam, but those zipper tabs are. You can lift up a little bit on the piece just to keep everything flat. Try and make sure that all of your edges are staying even. This is really not hard to sew in, you just want to go slowly. If you did not use thermolam in yours, as I did in mine, you definitely will have less bulk. Now I'm coming back over to where my zipper tabs are on the pocket. Okay. Now I'm just going to go check my seam and make sure that everything looks okay, and if it does, I'm just going to go over this a second time. And this time around when I sew, when I get to where all of my straps are, and I'll know that I'm there because I can feel them, and I can also see where I put the basting stitch in, I'm going to back stitch over that area a couple of times. I just finished checking my seam and everything looks good. I also made sure that I did not catch any of the lining or the bottom zipper tab in that line of stitching. So now I'm just going to sew over the exact same line that I just sewed, and I'm actually going to use the same stitch length that I used previously. Okay, so I am happy with how everything sewed in. I have all of my straps secured with double and triple stitching, and I made sure that nothing got caught here with the lining and the bottom zipper tab. So in this case I am going to trim down to 1/4 of an inch seam just because of the amount of bulk that's in here. That will help everything to lay a little bit better on the inside of the bag. Now I'm ready to sew the back lining to the main panels. So what I've done is I just pulled everything apart. So I have the exterior on one side and I have the lining on the other side. Okay, so you're going to do this the same exact way that you did before. This is free. We made sure that we didn't sew through that. And by the same token, now you have to make sure that you don't sew through this part, the exterior part. So I'll start by clipping the center mark here on the back lining to the center of the zipper tab. And I'll put a clip in there. And then we're going to clip the two ends together. And then you'll work your way up to the top. And again, if you need to cup around your fingers a little bit to help ease that in, you can do that, but you shouldn't have any trouble. This really should go in very easily. And then once you have this side all clipped into place, you'll start from the bottom of the opposite side and work up towards the top. Finish clipping that in and then we'll go sew it in place. This time I'm sewing with a 2.25 inch stitch length. Now I'm coming around to the top. I want to make sure that I don't catch anything of my exterior. Okay, I'm back stitching here because we need to leave a length open for turning the bag later. So they suggest 8 inches. I'll probably do a little bit more than 8 inches. I'm not sure how many inches that is, but it's a good amount, and I like to leave myself a lot of room for turning. And I also like to hand stitch my openings closed. I did go ahead and trim this seam allowance down to 1/4 of an inch. But where your opening is, right here, you don't want to trim that. You want to leave that at the full 1/2 inch. Now we're on step number 7, which is attach bottom panel. So the first thing that we want to do is create our bottom clip connector. So I have the piece here. I'm using a scrap of cork, so I have a little bit of a notch right there, but that's not going to matter. I marked a line directly down the center. And I'm going to take some sticky tape and put a piece on each side of that line. Make sure it's down nice and secure. And then I'm just going to go ahead and peel the paper off of both sides. And now that I have the tape peeled off, I'm just going to fold each end towards the center and stick it down on the tape. Okay, now I just need to take the D-ring and slip it on there, and we'll fold this back on itself. It's the same exact way that we made the strap connectors. Okay, you'll go over to the sewing machine, you're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge here, and then you'll pivot and sew across, and then you'll pivot again and sew 1/8 of an inch from the edge down this way. And again, when you're doing that, just make sure that you don't get too close to your hardware here where the presser foot would not be able to maneuver around it. So I finished top stitching around the clip connector, and I used a stitch length of 3.5, and now I'm just going to take my bottom panel piece, my exterior bottom panel, and I'm going to match the center of that clip connector up with the center of the bottom panel, and I'm going to baste it in place. Okay, so now we're ready to pin the exterior bottom to the exterior of the bag. So I have the lining side, right side, on the outside right now, and I've just folded it back to get it out of the way. And we're going to pin the bottom panel to the exterior. Okay, now the straight edge right here, that goes on the back, that goes towards the back of the bag. And the curved edge that has the clip connector on it, that goes to the front of the bag. So what we're going to do is start by clipping the two center backs. So I have the center back of the bottom panel and the center back of the backpack. And I'm just going to match those up. And I'm going to put a clip in it. So you can see it's, let's see, get it perfectly centered there. And put a clip in. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to match up the center seam of the front of the backpack to the center of the clip connector, and put a clip in there. And then I'm going to work my way around the curve and clip everything in place. Now, you will be dealing with some bulk here, especially if you've used cork like I have. You can always roll everything around your fingers to help everything fit in properly. Be patient with this part. It's going to take a little bit of doing, but it's very doable. I always like to take a lot of time when I'm clipping, because to me, if it's not clipped in well, the bag's not going to go together well. So I don't mind taking time to do this. And use as many clips as you feel you need to. Some people will use staples. I haven't really used staples very much. I find that for the most part, I'm able to get away with just using the clips. But it really depends on how sharp the curve is. The sharper the curve, the more clips you need, or the sharper the curve, you may want to use staples. So go ahead and clip in both sides of the bottom panel, and then we'll be ready to start sewing it. Okay, I have the bottom all clipped in now, and you can see that I've used a good amount of clips in there. I'm going to go over the machine and sew this, but I'm definitely going to baste it in first, and I'll probably use a stitch length of about 4.0. Okay, I'm ready to start sewing 1/2 inch seam and a stitch length of 4.0 for basting. You want to go slow. As you get to the curve, you can start maneuvering the bag so that it follows around that curve naturally. It's important that your seams, your side edges, are staying together. The bottom edge of the bottom panel and the bottom edge of the bag. Right now I'm going over the zipper tab where the pocket is. So you just keep maneuvering everything, and you just feel with your fingers to make sure that everything is flat. Okay, now I'm coming up to the other zipper tab on the other side of the pocket. Now I'm writing over the clip connector, and I'm not going to stitch back and forth over this a few times yet because I'm only basting, but once I have it basted in, I will go over that seam a few times. And that's one of those zipper tabs again that I'm going over. Making sure that everything feels flat underneath my fingers as I go around the curve. Just keep adjusting. Going over a second zipper tab in a minute here. Okay, now I'm just going to check my basting seam to make sure everything looks good. Okay, everything looks good. I only had very minimal pulling away from the edges, and there are no puckers anywhere. So now I'm just going to go over it with my permanent stitching, which I'm going to use a stitch length of 3.0. The bottom of the bag is now all sewn into place, and I did trim everything down to 1/4 inch seam. So now I have the bag completely turned inside out, and this is the lining side over here. So now we just need to sew in the bottom lining, and we're going to do that exactly the same way that we did for the bottom exterior. So the curved part goes towards the front of the bag, the straighter part goes towards the back. Okay? So go ahead and clip everything in, sew it in place, and then we'll move on to the very last step. I have the bottom panel lining sewn into place, and I did trim it down the seam to 1/4 inch. So now what you need to do is reach in to the side of the bag here where you had the opening in the lining, and you're just going to grab the exterior of the bag and you're going to start to pull it through that hole. So it'll take you a little bit of time, but you just keep working at it. Just pull it a little bit at a time and it will all come through. So here we go. Everything is turned right side out. The lining is on the inside here. All I need to do is go in and sew up that little opening, and as I said before, I like to do that by hand. So I will go ahead and do that, and we do need to still put on this clip connector onto this end. It did not take very long at all to turn this inside out. I left a big enough opening. It just took me a couple of minutes. And then you just, you know, make sure that all your seams are nice and rolled out. Just go around the whole bag, make sure that everything is exactly in place where it should be. So let's get started with putting on that last connector. Okay, now, to make the connector, this is what I did. I took 1/4 inch tape and I put it on all the straight edges, okay, on both sides. And then on the outside of the connector, I marked with a chalk line 1/4 of an inch from each edge. So then all I'm doing is peeling back the tape. And then after I peel back the tape from the right side, I'm folding right along that chalk line that I made. Okay, then I put it down on the table and I'm going to burnish it really well. Just using my plastic point turner here, just to make sure that it sticks. Okay, and then I'll do that for each side. Okay, so now that I have the last one off, I will just fold that down on my chalk line. Okay, burnish it really well. Try and get your corners there to be nice and clean looking. It's the best you can. Okay, then it gets folded in half like this. And you just make sure that all your edges are in where they should be, and before you close it up, obviously you have to put your clip on it. Okay, now that I have everything in place and I think everybody's behaving here, except for this back one, not so much, I'm just going to slip it over here. So I'm just going to put some Wonder Clips in there to hold everything in place. Make sure it's centered. And I am going to have a little bit of a tough time sewing mine down because I'm using cork, and also because I have the Thermolam in here. So when you sew this now, you just got to make sure that you're catching both sides of that connector. Okay, so let's go give it a try and see how we do. Okay, so here I am. Let's see how it goes. You do need to be able to catch both sides, so hopefully I have everything lined up in a way that's going to do that. I'll just be sewing 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, and I'm sewing with a stitch length of 3.5. So let's see how we do here. Okay, I'm going to pivot. So far so good, it's not too bad. I just don't know if it's catching the other side. So we'll just keep going and see how we do. Okay, I'm going to pivot again. It's a little hard getting the bag completely under here. Just going to hold everything down with my finger. I know it's a little bit hard for you guys to see right now. I'll see if I can get you a better view. And I'm pulling this because I don't want to hit it with the needle, but I think I'm far enough away that I'll be okay. And that's the one thing I hate about this machine. If you hit the foot control just the wrong way, it breaks your thread. But, okay, we'll just keep going. Okay, pivot again. Okay, now I'm going to go across the top again. I'm almost afraid to look under there, but we'll wait and see in a minute how we did. It's actually sewing through easier than I thought it would. Just going to do a little back stitch. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, actually not too bad. It did catch all of my edges here. I have a little bit of a nest here, but I'll clean that up, and I think I'm going to go around this one more time. And actually I do have another idea on a better way to create this piece here, but I think I'll save that for a separate video. So there's the connector. It went on better than I thought it would. And I did catch the connector on the other side with the stitching. So I'm pretty happy about that. So that's it. The only thing I have left to do is sew my inside lining, and there she is. So I hope that you were able to sew along with me and create this bag. If you liked the video, please press the like button and hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.